Hi everyone, I'm so excited you're with us on 33 Founders. Today it's an ultra special day for me because I'm here with Camille Ricketts, the head of content and marketing at First Round. Thank you so much for being with me, Camille.
Thank you. It's really great to be here.
So I want to start out, before we even dive into your work, explaining what an amazing job you've done with the First Round review. It's totally changed my career, and I know other people have latched on as fans just as much as I have. You shared before that your favorite part is the interview. What's your favorite question to ask someone when you sit down with them?
Oh, wow. That is an interesting question itself. Every interview is different because the people that I interview have different types of expertise and, different focus on a topic. But I would say that every single time I interview someone, I end with, what didn't I ask you but that I should have? And often that's when some of the more interesting stuff comes out and, leads to further conversation. So, for example, I remember asking Carly Guthrie at the end of an interview, and Carly Guthrie is former head of talent for Thomas Keller Restaurants, so like Per Se and French Laundry, and she went on to do HR for startups and is just this amazing HR thinker. And at the end of a story that we were working on about onboarding and how you can set people up for success, she said this one thing when I asked her that question about, we should really talk about like retention once talented people are onboarded. Like that's also a whole other conversation in itself. And her just saying that at the end of that particular interview sort of launched the idea of doing another story with her, which turned into something titled "This is Why People Leave Your Company." And that story ended up actually being massively more popular than the first story, and something that is now shared many, many times over every week. So like that kind of thing, you never know when it's going to happen, but a lot of times just at the end of a conversation, if people think that they haven't gotten everything out, prompting them to share is a good idea.
Yeah, it's a great piece. I'm probably not surprised, but I've read that one.
Yeah.
I know you have a special process for doing the interviews for the review. You have a call with them before, you send them the questions. Why do you think that sending them the questions is so important?
Yeah, it's actually a technique that I discovered in the middle of doing this job. Before, I would just assume what topic we were going to talk about and then launch into it. And I found that people sort of halted before they were able to answer questions. But when I sent them the questions in advance, they had a response that was much more fluid. Even if they hadn't really taken notes or anything, just the fact that they could anticipate what they were going to be asked just got the juices flowing and the wheels turning that much faster. And I think that people don't necessarily, even if they are an expert in something, don't necessarily have so much of their knowledge right at their fingertips. And so if they have a chance to even like dig a little bit under the surface of what their immediate response would be, you're going to get a lot more rich material. And also it gives people the chance to be like, you know what, these questions are great, but I would rather respond to like this type of thing, or it makes sense for our focus to be this instead, and just gives us a little bit of a buffer so that we make sure that they're talking about the right thing and that they're excited to talk about it.
Once you sit down with them, do you do most of them in person?
I do about half of them in person and then half over the phone, or I try to do video. I do find that sort of body language and being able to do face-to-face is a little bit more educational.
When they sit down with you, how do you make them feel comfortable?
I mean, I think that if you're on the first round review, we're acknowledging that you have incredible expertise in some area. So it's not hard to be flattering. It's not hard to explain exactly how much I admire this person's work. And I think that if that's the entry point into a conversation, the person's going to be that much more relaxed. And it's interesting because I was a journalist for many years at the Wall Street Journal and Venture Beat, and a lot of the stories that I wrote were sort of gotcha stories, where I was going to write something negative. Famously, I wrote very negatively about Tesla Motors, and then they ended up hiring me. But it was very hard, and I'm not the kind of person who has that sort of journalistic killer instinct. So I love my role here because it's more of a collaborative effort with the person that I'm featuring. Not only do I get to go in with this positive fuel of like, we really admire what you're doing, tell us about it, but they also get a chance to review the piece before it goes out. And I find that they're actually much more forthcoming in that case. They feel like a safety in the process, and end up adding much more than I think that they would otherwise.
When it comes to the killer instinct, although you don't have to employ it very often,
Yeah.
sometimes you do have to ask hard questions. Maybe if it's a piece about burn rate and they ran out of money. So it kind of creates that awkwardness. How do you wait out the awkward silence?
I think definitely starting with the questions that are going to make them feel that certain safety. So acknowledging the fact that they do have incredible wisdom in some area. And I have done stories, and I'm having trouble like thinking of an exact example. Although Pete Kazanji, who is the founder of Talent Bin and is now working at Monster and writing a story about building sales teams, he's very free and open with things that he wished that he had done better. So I think that like starting an interview, acknowledging the areas where they're particularly strong and asking them about that, and then making them feel really good, and then sort of testing the waters with, is there anything that you wish you had done differently? Or in the context of the fact that you've had all this success, like, where do you think you had a huge learning moment that got you to where you are now? That sort of leads very gently into areas where maybe they did come up short or they didn't have the knowledge that they needed, and they're more comfortable talking about that.
Once you finish the interview, which is always the fun part, and then they transcribe the interview and you're sitting down to write it, a lot less fun because it's hard. How do you get started?
I think that writers, no matter how much experience you have, sort of have this panic around the blinking cursor on the blank page, and it's sort of adversarial. Every time I open a new document, I'm like, ooh, I want to walk away from this. But one of the things that really eases me into it is having a theory around, a thesis around what the review really is. And for me, the first round review is all about providing tactical, actionable advice. So every article that somebody reads should leave them with something that they can do today or immediately in order to change their career or the way they approach their work. So what I do is I open up the transcript next to a blank document, and I just go through it and I pull everything over that fits into that bucket, like anything that could be considered a tactic or something that somebody could try right away. And I end up with a document that basically has all of those pieces consolidated. And that's how I build the outline. So starting with it that way, rather than just saying like, I'm going to sit down and bang out one of these pieces, versus I'm going to go through and pick out all of the gems that exist within this conversation, and then see how it's sort of taking shape, is a lot easier.
I love that you said that, because that's the same thing that I do. So I now feel like I have this super bright future.
Yeah, it's very helpful. I think any sort of intermediate step that you can get, because it's amazing. I find that if I'm like concentrating on work for 20 solid minutes, then I'm in the groove. Like I hit a flow state, but getting through those first 20 minutes is always hard. So if you give yourself something that's a little bit easier or a step away from the full task, it's better.
That's something that Scott Crabtree had spoken about, and you wrote about in the review, about not being able to multitask and get into a state of flow.
Absolutely. And actually writing that story with Scott changed the way that I work and that I think about how I approach things here at First Round. And interestingly, like I didn't anticipate that coming out of that interview at all. I got introduced to Scott through one of our partners here, Finn Barnes, who is a friend of his. And the stuff that he wanted to talk about being happy with your work didn't necessarily fit into what I normally write about the review. So I thought, we'll do the talk, we'll see how it goes, like no guarantees about what's going to come out of it. And I was just blown away by the magnitude of his insight. And it's ended up being one of the most popular stories of all time, and really showed me that there's more of a hunger and appetite out there from readers for pieces about work-life balance and stuff that's not necessarily all about like their career or how they do their particular function at their job.
So you mentioned that was a big learning for you, and kind of just stumbling into things because you don't know what's going to happen. I wanted to know what your biggest learning from the review was. And as I thought about all the notes that I have, I was like, that's impossible. There can't be just one. How about just this year? What are a couple that super stick out to you?
I would say that the level of experimentation that people go through in order to land on something that works really stands out to me. So a lot of times you hear the Silicon Valley story where it's like these guys or this team just built this thing. It was an incredible success and it's awesome. And you think to yourself, well, were they just lucky? Did they just have a great idea out of the gate? And that's almost never the case. So all of these incredible founders that I've had the ability to speak to, including Stuart at Slack, and just most of the founders, and Greg Hung at Reserve as well, just like the level of just everyday experimentation. I just did an interview that really also hit this home for me with a man named Gibson Biddle, and he's an incredible branding consultant right now, but he's well known for building basically the entire brand for Netflix 10 years ago. And he was saying how they would switch the look and feel and the tagline on the homepage on Netflix every single week, no matter how well the existing tagline performed, just because there was always room for improvement and there's no way to know where the ceiling is on that. And that sort of blew my mind and reinforced a lot of what I had been hearing about, like how you have to constantly be trying different things. And that there's no like hitting on a solution where you're like, well, this worked fantastic, let's just stick with it. So when I think about the review and like also what I want to do with marketing in general, I have to convince myself that like rampant experimentation is okay.
That goes right into what I wanted to ask you about what you guys are doing with Open.
Yeah.
Why is that so important to you?
So I'm really thrilled by this initiative, and it came out of us thinking about like, what can we do to just see more companies, and what is it about, the fundamental structure of venture capital that has existed or traditionally has been the case that prevents us from seeing as many companies as we want to. And we came to the conclusion that the only way that we were really discovering most of the companies we invested in was by getting referrals or warm introductions from existing contacts. Like every venture capital firm does have an email address. Like you can email First Round at firstround.com if you want to send in a pitch. And, I think every venture firm has that, but the number of times we actually pull from that is very limited. So we wanted to create a channel that was designed and optimized for us to really meet a lot of entrepreneurs that don't necessarily know us or know someone we know already. So our first batch, the deadline is May 31st, and we're excited to see what happens. So I would encourage anybody who doesn't necessarily have a warm connection with First Round already to go to firstround.com/openapp and check it out. And it's a video interview because we really believe that seeing how the person speaks fluidly about their idea and the problem they're solving is going to be the best indication of how strong their application would be.
When you think of the founders that are applying, there's always that little bit of nerves once you turn on the camera to pitch someone. What advice would you give them?
Oh, that's great. I would say that just being very, very prepared, like having reviewed all of your materials like over and over and over again, and really knowing what the key points are that you want to share. Because right now, we ask a series of questions, but we don't necessarily say what those questions are in advance because people should be prepared to basically answer anything about their company. If you do walk into a pitch at a major VC, you'll probably get interrupted immediately with like any number of questions about what it is you're doing. So you should be able to just like, and this is advice that I got from several people when I've asked them about fundraising, is that you have your pitch sort of that you deliver in chronological order to you, but you should be able to move to any section in that pitch at any time, given the questions that come up. Like it should be that natural and that top of mind. So that's basically what we're looking for in the video interview process.
When it comes to your time at First Round so far, it's been a little bit over 2 years, right?
Yes, or it's been actually almost 2 years. 2 years in July.
2 years in July. What is the highlight?
Oh, wow. There's been a lot of highlights. Like one of the things that I love most about this job is that I've just gotten to learn so many new things and have so many different experiences. So we have a really vibrant and robust events program that I've had the ability to sit in and learn from people over like a group of people over dinner. Present to our limited partners about how we're thinking about content and marketing overall. I would say that probably the highlight for me was November of this past year, we actually threw a large event around the review where we invited everybody who had been featured on the review to date. And having that many high horsepower people in the same room together, all socializing, and many of them knew each other, but many of them really just wanted to meet each other, but had no connection to do that yet, was super thrilling. And I was able to give a little presentation and thank everybody for being a contributor, and to see how many people actually came to that. And it was sort of a physical manifestation of the work I had been doing. It was really rewarding. And being able to provide an experience for them that went beyond just the review was really great.
That's huge. I feel like my heart's pounding. I was like, that is thrilling.
It was really cool. It was really cool.
Working with so many inspiring individuals, whether it's your time at First Round or before, who are your mentors?
Oh, geez. Well, I'm really fortunate to work with an incredible partnership here. Finn Barnes in particular has been a huge influence on me, and he's a remarkable thinker. He was creative director at a athletic shoe company, and just has this very creative approach to his work and the way that he thinks through design and user experiences. And he's just been an incredible sounding board and second pair of eyes for me. And now he's actually writing a column for the Wall Street Journal that runs occasionally on weekends, and I get to be his second pair of eyes. So it's just like a very fruitful collaboration. And then a few of the other partners as well. Josh Koppelman is, of course, like brilliant, incredible person to work with, and it's awesome to see the startup ecosystem through his eyes. So I would say that I'm incredibly fortunate to work with them. And then I would also say that Heidi Roizen at DFJ is not just a source of wisdom and support for me, but also just an incredible role model as a woman who has been tremendously successful and is now changing the way that venture works in her own way.
When it comes to that learning, then, what are the core ways that you learn, whether it's podcasts, books, something you're watching?
Like how I discover those things, or?
Yeah, what do you use to get better?
So I'm a big fan, continually. I always feel like, especially now, there's this big emphasis on growth and being able to really optimize lots of the things that you're doing. And there's always room for improvement in how you email people and the copy that you choose to use to attract people. So Kissmetrics and Heaton Shaw at Kissmetrics is just an incredible repository of wisdom on all of this. So whenever I'm thinking of making a change, like whether it's the pop-up that collects email addresses on the review or the copy that I use to sort of describe the review when I talk to people, I often reference the Kissmetrics blog. It's sort of my holy grail of content marketing advice. And I was actually able to, I moderated a dinner with content marketers, and Heaton came, and I was starstruck and amazed, and he said incredibly insightful things to the group. So there's that. And then I would say that in the past year, like actually reading Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 was a huge source of inspiration to me. Just what it said about entrepreneurship and sort of the drive and the passion that fuels entrepreneurship at its most basic level was really, really insightful for me as I approached the review and then also advising some of our companies.
Do you have a dream interview?
That's a really good question. You know, speaking with Heidi Roizen was kind of a dream of mine that came together, and that was incredible. I actually wrote a story about her without her really knowing about it. I had seen a video interview that she did at Stanford's Entrepreneur Corner, and I have a deal with the Entrepreneur Corner where I can use their content if I find it very inspiring and write sort of a longer form story about it. So I wrote the story about Heidi, and then she actually got in touch with me about that, and I was able to go like take a walk with her dog around her neighborhood. And I was just I was nervous but also so thrilled to meet her and make that connection. So that was kind of a dream come true. And then I would say if I aspired to interview somebody else, I I mean, this has nothing to do with tech, but like Hillary Clinton would be like completely incredible. And if possible, I would love to interview her about how she does see like the US digital service evolving and the role of technology and how the government's going to be run in the future. Because I think that that's completely fascinating.
If there's anything I can do, I'll try to get on that for you.
That would be great.
I want to touch on something that I learned in the first post that you wrote when you were working at Tesla. I think it goes back in 2010.
Oh, wow.
You shared that every day at Tesla is like playing the championship game.
Yes.
How did that transform the way you work?
Wow, Tesla completely transformed the way that I work, to be honest. I was pretty young when I got that job. I was 25. And prior to that, I had worked at VentureBeat. And being a reporter is a very different mode of working, especially if you're a reporter for an online site. You kind of work remotely most of your time. You're very autonomous. I was the only writer for the green technology section there, so I basically did my own thing, and nobody talked to me about it. Like, I loved working with Owen Thomas, and he was a huge source of knowledge, but I didn't have, like, I wasn't accountable to anyone necessarily in a huge way. And then when I went to Tesla, it was working on a team, very interconnected. The company had so many eyeballs on it. So to be sort of the outward-facing person for this company that everybody in the world was watching, there was just no room for error, right? And I think that that's something that we all sort of took as our main directive, is that, all it requires is perfection. So to be able to like come to work with that level of sort of game face on, like for that length of time, completely changed like my expectations of myself, what I thought was possible, and then just my work ethic, I would say, was entirely transformed by that.
When it comes to having to do everything with perfection, though, part of that's a little bit paralyzing because it's scary. How'd you get over that?
Gosh, I don't know if I ever did get over that, to be honest. I think that you just have to celebrate the big wins as much as you possibly can. So I remember I did a walk around of the Model S with the head technology reporter at Forbes, and it was the first time that I had ever done sort of the complete tour of the car. And I remember being actually the moment where I was like in there giving the presentation and realizing that I was actually being hyper articulate about this, and I wasn't using the words or like or anything, and it was super fluid, and it was sort of an out of body experience as I watched myself do this. And then at the end, when the interview and the video of me doing it actually ran on the site, George Blankenship, who was the head of the retail organization at Tesla, sent an email to the sales organization saying, this is how everybody should be able to talk about the car. And that was a huge win. And I didn't think that I was capable of that. So like really celebrating and noticing that and allowing that to sort of fuel my work going forward was really important. And here at First Round, I feel like I have the same attitude where whenever I do get really positive feedback or stories at the top of Hacker News or something, I really want to like squeeze all of the victory out of that.
When you think of celebrating that, something that was actually in your post from Heidi Roizen was when she said you have to let good and random things happen to you.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me because, for example, had you not answered Brett's email 2 years ago, you may never have ended at First Round.
Yeah, like all of that chain of events that led to me being in this job just really does have some sort of cosmic universal quality about it. And I think to myself about those things and how important it is to say yes to more things, which is difficult because if you're working in a job like this, to be protective of your time, you have to say no to a lot of things. So really, like saying yes to just as much as possible has become a mantra of mine. Just because I would have no way of knowing even what I was missing out on if I hadn't answered Brett's email. So I'm deeply grateful to him and just how all of that worked out and my ability to be open-minded.
When it comes to having that long view perspective and saying, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. I have a feeling you're going to be at first round for a pretty long time. But what are some things in your career that you haven't done yet that you want to?
Oh, wow. I would say that that managing people is something that I feel really strongly about. I was able to get some experience doing that at Kiva, managing a few interns for long lengths of time, and I drew just a lot of inspiration and fulfillment from that. I had a couple really terrific interns that I worked with there. One of them is named Bridget Bradford, and she now actually is running marketing at one of the startups that First Round funds.
Oh, cool.
So she's part of the First Round family. But she was just such an incredible powerhouse at Kiva, just running the blog and the social media, and I felt so fortunate to work with her and to sort of shape how she was thinking about her career and really have a lot of discussion about that. That's an opportunity that I'd like to have in the future, and we are growing the team at First Round, so I think that'll probably be something I get to do here. So there's that, and then I would also say that I want to be better at the writing. When I say that I aspire for the review to be a lot like the New Yorker meets the Review or meets the Harvard Business Review, I know that potential is out there. But right now, occasionally I don't have the bandwidth to think that expansively about a piece, or I don't know. It's just still missing the mark on that. But I'd love to explore different types of writing here and even get more textured and storytelling focused in the stuff that I write.
Well, from your number one fan, you're doing a pretty good job.
Thank you.
I want to close with a great piece that I stumbled upon in the review on a morning that I really, really need. I always read the review while eating something that's chocolate, so it's just like the best marriage ever.
Positive association now.
It's El Luna's piece, The Crossroads of Should and Must. And I think that's impacted so many.
Yes, it has.
How are you choosing your must every day?
Wow, that's a great question. I love that story so much. It's one of my favorite things that I've ever had a chance to even be a part of. And I think I wake up every day and I try to think about what it is that I am most grateful for. Like in the landscape of my life, what are the things that I feel lucky to have happening to me? Because I always think that it's good to lean into those things and to really have a good handle on those things. Like most people might not be able to even immediately respond to that question of what they're thankful for, but having that top of mind has been very, very helpful to me. So I actually write it down. Like I do this exercise that Elle actually does as well called morning pages.
Oh, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. And I highly recommend that for everybody, where you wake up and you basically write 3 pages front, just like loose leaf pages front and back, and whatever comes out, and there's no pressure on anything. And mine often turn toward what I am most grateful for. And I have to say that in addition to having wonderful friends and family that I can lean on and just love to death, that my job is like number 2 in my life. Like just the fact that I was able to connect with this job, that it's given me the platform to discover and meet and speak to so many incredible people, that I get to work with a team where I feel like I am on the Olympic team of venture capital every day, basically. And so really understanding how grateful I am for that, makes me choose must. Like that makes me feel and know that the work that I'm doing here is a must for me.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being with me today. Like I told you, I felt like the Pee Wee quarterback who got to throw with Peyton Manning.
That's so sweet.
Can we end with you just sharing how people can stay up to date with you and start reading the review?
Yeah, I would say that if you haven't already, check it out at firstround.com/review. And it might not be what you're even expecting. I hear from a lot of people that they were expecting something very different from what they ended up getting out of it. So I'd say going through some of the older stuff, it's all super evergreen, and checking it out, and then also subscribing. so that you get the email whenever we do come out with a new piece, is the easiest way to sort of stay up to date with it. And then I'm on Twitter, and I love Twitter so much, so I am going to plug myself. I hope that that's okay, but I'm at Camille Ricketts, and I love it when people tweet to me. It's how you and me got connected, and I just think it's an awesome portal to new relationships and ideas.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really am so grateful to be here and to meet you.